A big rise in the national debt is another economic problem that came up after the outbreak. Our guess is that it will be $144 trillion or $1 million per family in 30 years. What do you think about the country's debt? Most of the time, we try very hard not to say anything about economic policy or tell Congress how to do their job, even though they are supposed to be watching over us. Do you think the national debt is bad for the business, though? The U.S. is on a fiscal road that can't be kept up in the long term. The central government of the United States is spending too much money too quickly. That only means the debt is rising faster than the economy. I think this brings you a lot of stress. In the long run, it does, of course. You could say that we're borrowing from the people who will come after us. It's time to put saving money back at the top of our list of priorities. And it's better to do it now than later. That was Jerome Powell telling you that the U.S. is going in a direction that can't be saved. The United States national debt is now $34.7 trillion, as we can see, and has no plans to slow down soon. This only means that the dollar will get weaker over time. In 10 years, the dollar will not be worth as much as it is now, and the prices of things will also go up. The M2 money supply shows how much money is in circulation in the U.S. If we go all the way back to April 1959, we can see that there was only $290 billion in M2 money. I'd like to test how long it took to add $1 trillion to the M2 money supply so that I can write this. We can see that it took until around October 1977 to add $1 trillion to the M2 money supply. That means it will take about 20 years to add $1 trillion. Let's see how long it takes to get the next $1 trillion from $1.20 to $2.20 to. We can see that it takes 8 years, or 1984, to add $800 billion more. You can see that adding $1 trillion to the M2 money pool is getting faster. And if we scroll up to the last few years, we can quickly check the time here. In January 2022, we had $9.7 trillion. We got to $10.70 just over a year. If we look at how long it took, it only took about a year and a half to add another $1 trillion to the M2 money supply. You can see that the money is getting worth less over time. To keep this house of cards standing, they will have to print more and more money. Just look at what they did during COVID. So in January 2020, we had about $15.3 trillion, and now we have $21.5 trillion. In 2 years, they made the M2 money supply $6 trillion bigger. This is why the price rise was so bad. Also, it's clear that interest rates have gone up. Our spending rules have become stricter. The amount of M2 money has gone down a little. But they will have to keep printing money to keep this house of cards standing once inflation goes back down. A lot of people like to talk about how Bitcoin's returns are going down over time as the numbers get bigger. But they never bring up the fact that you have to keep printing more and more dollars to keep the economy from collapsing and the US dollar stable. In addition, the US government prints more money every time the economy goes down. I also want to show you this video clip. Let's quickly take a look. You just make money and pay off debt. If we can make this much money out of thin air, what's stopping us from making 10 trillion? I used to make fun of Paul Krugman's idea of a $100 bill. Now I feel like saying, hey man, let's just get $10 trillion and split them up. Are we all the same? Good. After that we start over because this whole thing seems fake. Trade it in for their loan. And now, at the very least, we're in charge because we paid off our debt. So we can't take it back now. We are much better able to handle our debt now, even if interest rates rise. That makes sense, right? I believe one of the most important points you were trying to make with him was that the national debt is something that needs to be fixed. This is Rowan's point. There is green paper and yellow paper here. There are dollars and reserves, but people think of them in very different ways. For the most part, we think of government bonds, stocks, and yellow paper as debt. But green paper is not. The Fed is buying that. They are getting treasuries. Bonds are being bought. They're getting debt. Yeah, because Tom thinks at the level of the central bank, he sees them as the same. To him, they are just different debts on a bank sheet. But down here with us and with the people, things are very different. Are you aware of how much public money is out there, John? How many people understand that? There is a counter for the national debt. There isn't a national money counter below. That's not being counted. They are still adding an extra $120 billion a month to that supply. It has nothing to do with grandkids, China, or bond markets. It makes me think of how our government tells you that you need to pay. So whenever there is an emergency or something very important that people need, the government will say, Sorry, we have discretionary spending this much money. The only way to add to that is to take it away from someone else or make a pay for it. Okay, we also want to start a war. Oh, okay, what do we get paid for? Yes, we're not going to have to pay for that. How do you mean? Yes, we're just free. We're going to pay for it and put it out there. We're not going to, though. We won't even think about that bill. It's not added to anything. It just is. At that point, it seems like you're the only one who can decide what goes on our budget and what doesn't. That's the part one was having trouble with. That shows that everyone in the country is looking into what's wrong with our money. Why can't inflation be stopped? What's wrong with the money? How did they print it out of thin air? And you know everyone on our show who works with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. If you think Bitcoin is the answer to this problem, you should share this clip from Eric Voorhees with other people. Tell your family, friends, and loved ones that Bitcoin is a way to keep their money safe in a world where money is losing value all the time. And something like Bitcoin is giving up on the old way of doing money, where they own the money, it's theirs to print as much as they want. And I think Eric said it best in this clip. That's why I want to share with you. Let's go see it. To begin, a world where gold was used as money once more would be better than the present one. That's okay with me. My main worry is that the world's money comes from the market and not from the government controlling everything through force. The second one is very un-American and dangerous, and it's been around since at least 1971, when the dollar became a paper currency. I would be in favor of anything that moves the world away from having one group control money and toward having the market control money. Hey Peter, I'll give you praise if you can make everyone accept gold as money again. That's great. Some of us don't want to wait around for that. You can send money in the digital world without going through a central bank. We think this has value. And I know that when we had our first discussion in 2011, 2012, or 2013, we had to prove our case. We had to make our case for why it was a coin or money. We had to say those things because no one would have believed us before. This is a $1.2 trillion asset, one of the most valuable assets in the world and one of the top 10 assets in the world by market cap. The year is 2024. I don't need to say Bitcoin is something over and over again. Everyone thinks it's something. It's clear why. Anyone who has used Bitcoin on their phone to send money abroad with a bank will understand its value right away. Right away. I don't have to defend it very much either. Okay then, it's just getting bigger. It's a choice. Bitcoin doesn't exist, or you would both have to use it all the time. If you want to stay in the old way of doing things with money, take the Titanic down. Do it. A lot of us are picking something else.